Some billionaires can buy everything, except the memory of seeing their child grow up. The auditorium was gold-trimmed, full of silk ties and hushed pride. Then a black boy stepped onto the stage. Alone. Proud. Sharp suit, worn shoes. The applause was polite, hesitant. One woman clapped louder. She sat in the last row. Gloria. Richard Hawthorne adjusted his cufflinks. He wasn't expecting that face. Same jawline, same stare, same pause before speaking. The boy's voice came through the mic. Jaden Gloria Miller. Richard's phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the marble. Every head turned, even the boys. He looked at Richard. Curious, not scared. Mom. Why is that man staring at me like that? Gloria didn't answer. She simply sat taller. Like a storm she had survived was finally watching her rise. Richard didn't move. But something in him had just cracked open, and for the first time in years, he forgot where he was supposed to be. She got in because she was brilliant. They said she got in because she was black. Gloria walked the halls of Easton University, sketchbook pressed tight to her chest. Top of her class. Honors student. A portfolio full of color and ache. Her mother scrubbed the marble floors one building over. Sometimes Gloria passed her on the way to class. They nodded, but never waved. In class, she was sharp, quiet, serious. A professor once told her, "You're surprisingly articulate." Another student whispered, "She's lucky the school needed diversity this year." She didn't answer. She kept drawing. Girls flying over fences, women holding storms in their hands. She wanted to become an artist, not for galleries, for children, for stories like hers. At night, she'd sit under the campus clock tower, sketching with fingers stiff from cold. No coffee, no coat, just charcoal and fire, because if she couldn't belong in their world, she'd draw one where she did. They met in the campus library. She was sketching near the law books. He was pretending to study. Richard Hawthorne, son of legacy. Everyone knew his name. No one expected him to look twice at her, but he did. Every night for weeks, he came back. No cameras, no entourage, just him. They talked in whispers between rows of dusty books, art and pressure, poverty and legacy. He loved how quiet she was. She loved that, with him, she didn't have to be. One night, he kissed her. Quick, nervous. Her sketchbook dropped to the floor. Then came the flashlight. A guard's voice. "You're not supposed to be here." He looked straight at Gloria. "No," the guard added. "I meant her." She pulled away fast, picked up her things without looking back. He reached for her hand but didn't chase. And in that moment, they both knew this wasn't a world built for love like theirs. She invited Gloria to a private lounge uptown. White marble floors, champagne on ice, smiles that never reached the eyes. Charlotte Hawthorne didn't waste time. A sealed envelope slid across the table. A DNA test, negative. Gloria's fingers didn't move. Charlotte's voice stayed calm. "I had it checked. He's not the father. He'll never need to know." Then came the check. 6 figures. Blank memo line. "Take it. Start over. I'm helping you end the fantasy before it ruins you." Gloria looked at the envelope, then at the pen. She didn't touch either. "You think I'm here for money?" she asked, quiet. Charlotte blinked. "No, that's the problem. You're here for love." She stood to leave, heels clicking across cold stone. Before exiting, she added, "Don't confuse kindness with belonging. You'll never be one of us." The door shut behind her. Gloria stayed seated, not crying, just still, and for the first time she felt truly erased. She never took the money. She never told Richard. 2 weeks later, Gloria withdrew from Easton University. No ceremony. No goodbye. The registrar handed her a plain folder. Her scholarship had been revoked. No reason listed. Just a stamp. Non-compliance. She packed her dorm in silence. 1 suitcase, 1 sketchbook, 1 ultrasound folded between books. Outside, the sky broke open. Rain fell like punishment. She walked alone through the stone archways she once dreamed under. No umbrella, no hand to hold. Just her and the life growing inside her. Students passed, some staring, some pretending not to see. She kept walking. Her mother met her at the bus stop. No words, just a coat draped over her shoulders. Gloria looked up once, back toward the tower. She used to think she'd come back one day. But standing there, soaked and shivering, she finally understood. Some doors don't close. They vanish. They lived in a one-bedroom walk-up with thin walls and no heat. Gloria worked mornings at a diner, afternoons at a library, nights at a grocery store. No child support, no family help, no one to call, just bottles, bills, and back pain. She painted on the side, quietly, mostly at night when Jaden was asleep. Tiny canvases lined the windowsill, drying next to formula bottles. One winter evening, Jaden burned with fever. She held him close, whispering songs she barely remembered. He shivered in her arms. She had no car, no insurance, no cash. She wrapped him in her coat and ran 2 blocks in the cold, then walked into a coffee shop, opened her bag, and pulled out a painting. "I'll sell this," she said to the owner. "Please, I just need enough for medicine." He stared at the canvas, then at her. He handed her $40. She ran, and for a moment the world felt too heavy for even her strongest parts. The walls were covered in crayon suns and watercolor dreams. Gloria's art class met twice a week in a church basement, free for any child who showed up. She brought the paint, the brushes, the snacks. Some days the lights flickered. Other days the heat didn't work. But the kids came anyway. Jaden always sat near the front, focused, careful. He drew superheroes, rockets, families with big smiles. One afternoon, they were assigned a Draw Your Family project. Most kids drew moms and dads, pets, and porches. Jaden's page showed 3 figures, him, Gloria, and an empty white space beside them. Another child leaned over and asked, "How come we never see your dad?" Jaden shrugged. "Maybe he's just really far away." Gloria stood in the back, watching. She didn't interrupt. Later that night, she gently folded Jaden's drawing and placed it in a box labeled, "Someday." She wasn't sure if that word was a hope or a lie she needed to keep telling. Richard never asked his team to investigate. He just made a quiet call to the foundation, asked for the student list, checked the annual grant reports. Westbrook Prep, fully funded by the Hawthorne Education Initiative. One name stood out, Jaden Gloria Miller. He drove there alone, unannounced. A hallway bulletin board displayed student art. Amid rainbows and rockets, one piece caught his eye. A boy, standing next to a woman with warm eyes. Next to them, an outline of a man. No face, no hands, just a shadow. Title, "My Family, I Think." Richard stared at it. His breath slowed. Something shifted in his chest. A teacher walked by and said, "That one's by Jaden. Smart kid. Draws people he's never met like he knows their souls." Richard didn't respond. He kept staring at the faceless figure, not because he recognized it, but because he didn't. And that, somehow, hurt more than anything he could explain. The letter came in a thick, white envelope, sealed with a Hawthorne crest. Gloria opened it with steady hands but a tightening chest. Petition for legal custody. Filed by Charlotte Hawthorne. Claim: the minor child is currently residing in an environment below the standard suitable for a Hawthorne heir. Translation: Jaden doesn't belong in a 2-room apartment above a laundromat. He belongs in gated communities, with piano lessons and private drivers. Gloria read every line, then read it again. No mention of love, no concern for the child. Just assets, legacy, reputation. Richard called, voice low. "I didn't know she was doing this." Gloria didn't yell. "Of course you didn't. She never needed your permission." Charlotte later told the press, "This isn't about race, it's about standards." But the world knew better. Gloria knew best. Because when power speaks softly, it's still violence, just dressed in silk. It started with one headline, "From art class to billionaire bloodline." Then came the interviews, the panels, the opinion pieces. Images of Gloria were cropped, filtered, twisted. A soft smile turned into a smirk. A mother became a manipulator. Single black mom claims custody over Hawthorne heir. No DNA, no wedding ring, just a child and a story. Footage of her teaching kids with paint on her hands was used to question her hygiene. Screens flashed quotes like, "She played the long game," a poverty-to-palace strategy. Gloria stopped opening her laptop. Jaden asked why people were calling her gold digger online. She didn't answer. The world didn't ask who raised the child. It asked who owned him. And the real question, the one whispered but never said aloud, would they be reacting this way if she were white? What do you think? How many mothers have to fight twice, once for their child and again to prove they deserve to? The room was silent when Gloria stood. Not hostile, just politely uncomfortable. She wasn't on the list to speak, but after the headlines, the stares, and the whispered questions, she didn't wait for permission. She looked at the front row, where Jaden sat, legs swinging, eyes steady. Then she turned to the other parents. "I know what some of you are thinking, that I don't belong here, that I showed up with a story and a child and expectations." She paused. "But I'm not here to ask for space. I'm here to remind you that my son earned his. I don't teach my child to apologize for his skin. I teach him to wear it like a crown." No one clapped, but no one looked away either. Gloria nodded once and sat down. Jaden smiled. Some people shifted in their chairs, unsure what had just happened. But something had cracked, quietly. And cracks over time become light. A new article dropped. This one hit harder. Before the paint, Gloria Miller's bar job passed. Attached was a photo, blurry, cropped from years ago. Gloria, in a waitress apron, balancing a tray of drinks under neon lights. They didn't say she broke any laws. They didn't have to. The article called it a pattern of questionable decisions, a conveniently timed pregnancy, a woman comfortable in nightlife but unprepared for motherhood. Charlotte's legal team leaked it quietly, let the media carry the weight, and they did. Talk shows asked if Gloria had set her sights on the Hawthorne name early. Podcasts debated her moral credibility. Richard saw it, said nothing publicly. But behind closed doors, he asked his mother why. She just replied, "I'm protecting our legacy." Gloria didn't issue a statement. She went back to work, back to her students. But at night, she erased old self-portraits from her sketchbook. Because sometimes the hardest thing to fight is the version of yourself the world insists on showing first. Jaden came home quiet. No backpack, no appetite, just silence. Gloria knelt in front of him, brushing dirt off his sleeves. "What happened?" He looked down, voice flat. "A kid called me a mistake. Said I'm the half-breed nobody wanted." Gloria froze. "Then he said I'm the reason your name is in the news." He didn't cry. He just asked, "Can we go to a different school? One where I don't have to explain who I am?" That night, Gloria stared at the enrollment forms on the kitchen table. Transferring would be easy, quiet, safe. But then she saw Jaden asleep on the couch, his tiny fingers still stained with paint from her class. She picked up the forms and tore them in half. "They don't get to decide where you belong," she whispered to herself. "Not this time." Because love doesn't walk away. It holds its ground. Even when the world calls your child a name, they should never have to hear. Richard waited outside the art center, hands in his coat pockets. Kids poured out with messy hands and paper crowns. Then he saw her, Gloria, tired but steady, paint on her jeans, resolve in her spine. She stopped when she saw him. No smile, no surprise, just stillness. "I had no idea what my mother was doing," he started. "I should have asked, should have known." Gloria folded her arms. "You didn't want to know. That's what hurts the most." He stepped closer. "Let me help. Let me fix this." She shook her head. "I used to believe you. I used to believe a lot of things." A pause, her voice lowered. "But now, I only believe what I teach my son, how to stand on his own." Jaden called from the window, waving. She turned to leave. Richard stood there, hand half raised, not sure if he had just lost her for good, or if this was what earning trust actually looked like. It happened between brushstrokes. One minute, Gloria was helping a girl mix sky blue. The next, her hands shook. Her knees buckled. She collapsed in front of a dozen stunned kids. Jaden ran to her, voice cracking. "Mom! Mom!" She didn't answer. A neighbor called 911. Jaden called the only other number he had. Richard answered on the first ring. All he heard was his son's voice, breaking. "She won't wake up. Please, come." At the hospital, Richard sat beside her bed watching the monitor beep. She was pale, still, hooked to IVs. Jaden sat in his lap, head against his chest. "Is she gonna die?" Richard blinked back the heat in his eyes. "No, she's just tired. She's carried too much for too long." Jaden didn't respond. He just reached up and held Richard's hand, like he wasn't sure if it would be there tomorrow, like he'd already learned not to count on it, until now. While Gloria slept, Richard cleaned the apartment in quiet confusion. Everything felt small, worn, but full of life. He noticed the shelf above her desk, lined with handmade frames, finger-painted edges, smudged corners, names scribbled in Jaden's handwriting. He picked one up. Jaden's first steps. In the photo, Gloria, on her knees, arms open. Jaden, mid-step, giggling. No one else in the frame. Another, first tooth. Gloria, holding a tiny toothbrush, her smile proud, exhausted. Richard sank into the couch, flipping through each frozen moment. First birthday. Hospital wristbands. A drawing titled Me and Mom. He hadn't missed milestones. He'd missed a lifetime. The ache came slow and sharp. Not guilt, grief. He whispered, I should have been there. Jaden peeked from the hallway holding a blanket. You can still be. Richard nodded. Just once. And it meant everything. Gloria sat upright in the hospital bed, pale but stronger. Sunlight filtered through half-closed blinds, casting soft shadows across the sheets. Richard stood at the foot of the bed, hands folded, voice low. I believed my mother over my own heart. I told myself it was logic, but really, it was fear. She didn't look at him, just watched the IV drip. I'm sorry, Gloria, for not fighting, for vanishing. Still, she said nothing. After a moment, she spoke, quiet, steady. It's not your fault. Richard blinked. She turned to him. The fault was mine, I hoped. That was my mistake. The words landed heavy, but not angry, just tired. He wanted to say more, wanted to beg for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe another chance, but she closed her eyes. Not to sleep, just to end the conversation. Some silences say more than shouting ever could, and Richard finally heard every word she didn't say. The courtroom echoed with soft murmurs and sharp heels. Charlotte sat upright, designer suit crisp, eyes cold. Beside her, a team of attorneys stacked with binders and evidence. Gloria sat alone. No lawyer, just her hands folded in her lap. Her face was calm, but her fingers trembled under the table. Charlotte's attorney stood first. Your Honor, we request full custody. The child is a Hawthorne. He deserves structure, stability, and status his current home cannot provide. He gestured toward Gloria. Miss Miller has no documented income, no higher education degree, no suitable housing. The judge turned. Miss Miller, do you wish to respond? Gloria rose slowly. No long statement, no defense. She looked at Jaden, seated with a court officer. Just this. Let my son choose. Gasps fluttered across the courtroom. The judge raised an eyebrow. You want a minor to testify? Gloria nodded. Jaden stood, small, shaking, but ready to speak, and the entire room held its breath. The doors creaked open just as the judge was about to speak. Everyone turned. Eleanor Hawthorne stepped in, heels clicking, eyes sharp but tired. Charlotte stiffened. Richard looked stunned. Your Honor, Eleanor said clearly, I'd like to speak. Charlotte's lawyer objected, but the judge raised a hand. She's on the record as family. Proceed. Eleanor faced the courtroom, not the bench. My mother has done this before. Gasps. Charlotte's jaw tightened. When I was 19, I fell in love with a man who didn't look like us. She looked directly at Gloria. My mother paid him to leave, then told me he was never serious, that I was foolish. Charlotte's voice cracked. Eleanor, sit down. But Eleanor didn't move. You say you're protecting your legacy, but maybe you're just protecting your image. She turned to the judge. Gloria isn't unfit. She's just inconvenient for a family that doesn't like mirrors. Silence fell, except for Jaden, who reached for Gloria's hand and held on. Flashes burst like lightning outside the courthouse. Cameras, mics, questions flying like darts. Richard, is the boy really yours? Gloria, did you trap a billionaire? Jaden, do you even know who you are? Security tried to hold the crowd. Richard stepped in front of Gloria, shielding her, but Jaden, small and steady, walked beside him. He slipped his hand into Richard's. I don't care if you're a billionaire, he whispered, barely audible through the noise. I just need you not to leave me again. Richard froze, knees weak, heart tight. He knelt down, level with his son. I won't, ever again. One photo caught it. A billionaire, not in suit, but in tears, holding his son's hand like it was the only thing keeping him standing. The headline would say, Hawthorne heir, scandal, or redemption. But the real question is, what makes a father, money or memory? What would you choose? Love that shows up, or a name that never did? The courtroom held its breath. The judge glanced over the papers, then looked directly at Gloria, Richard, and Jaden. This court grants joint custody to both parents. A pause. Should both parties agree, the child may reside in one home, with shared parenting responsibilities. Richard exhaled. Gloria closed her eyes. Jaden smiled, quiet, unsure, but hopeful. Charlotte stood still, lips pursed. She didn't object, didn't congratulate, didn't say goodbye. She simply turned, heels clicking down the aisle, coat trailing behind like a closing curtain. Not defeated, just unwilling to witness what love looked like without her control. Richard reached for Gloria's hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold back either, not yet. Outside, the noise began to fade. The headlines would twist it. But in that room, the truth was simple. A boy got to keep both his parents. Maybe not a perfect ending, but for once, a beginning that didn't start in silence. The boardroom was silent. Leather chairs, glass walls, and decades of power pulsing beneath polished floors. Richard stood at the head of the table, no tie, sleeves rolled, voice steady. "Today, I'm stepping down as CEO of Hawthorne Global." A ripple of gasps, whispers. He continued before anyone could interrupt. "A company survives without me. It thrives on systems, strategies, names on paper." He paused, eyes scanning the room, not for approval, but to be heard. "But a child, a family, they don't run on systems. They run on presence, on choices." He reached into his briefcase, pulling out a photo. Jaden holding a paintbrush, face lit with joy. "No one ever says, 'I wish I spent more time in board meetings.'" Soft laughter, one or two nods. "You can always rebuild an empire, but you can't rebuild a childhood." He placed the photo on the table. "No one truly needs a corporation, but everyone needs a place to call home." The book cover was simple. Crayon strokes, a mother holding an umbrella over a child beneath swirling skies. "When Mama Paints the Storm." Gloria's name sat quietly in the corner, but the message roared. What started as bedtime sketches for Jaden became a published children's book, read in classrooms, passed between single mothers, praised for its raw truth. Weeks later, Gloria stood behind a podium at the United Nations. No spotlight, no gown, just a soft blue dress and the voice of someone who'd learned to speak through survival. "I didn't write a book to become someone," she said. "I wrote it because I already was." Behind her, images from the book appeared. Storms, rooftops, a mother painting light into the dark. Every child deserves to be seen. Every mother deserves to be heard. Applause followed, not for fame, but for quiet triumph. Not everyone survives the storm, but some learn how to paint through it. The classroom smelled like old paint and fresh hope. Tiny hands dipped brushes into plastic cups, swirling colors across paper plates. Jaden moved between tables, gently correcting a shaky line or uncapping a stubborn tube of yellow. He looked just like her, quiet, careful, watching everything. Gloria stood at the front, sleeves rolled, smudges on her cheeks she didn't notice. Her eyes followed the chaos with calm pride. A small girl, no older than 6, tugged at Gloria's apron. Big eyes, missing front tooth. "Miss Gloria, are you a famous artist?" The room quieted for a second. Jaden turned to listen. Gloria crouched to the girl's level, smile soft. "I'm famous in the hearts of the people I love." The girl blinked, then nodded like that was better than any museum. Jaden chuckled. Outside, the sun filtered through paint-splattered windows, and for once, nothing needed fixing. Only feeling. Brushes danced again, and so did Gloria's heart. The park was quiet. Late afternoon light filtered through the trees, golden and slow. Jaden ran ahead chasing leaves. Gloria sat on a wooden bench, warm drink in hand, eyes soft with quiet peace. Richard approached. No box, no flash, no crowd. Just him. He knelt, not on one knee but both, his palms open, empty. "I don't have a diamond," he said, voice low, "but I have what I should have given you long ago, everything honest inside me." Gloria looked down, unsure. "I once let go of the most beautiful thing I've ever known. Please, don't let me do it again." Jaden watched from a distance, holding a leaf between small fingers. No speeches, no guarantees. Just a man and a woman and years between them. Gloria didn't answer with words. She simply stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, and in that quiet hold, he finally became hers. Not by force, but by grace. Gloria nodded, tears in her lashes, arms wrapping around Jaden like a vow older than time. The boy smiled, pressed between them, small hands reaching to hold them both together. Weeks later, the waves whispered their own blessing. No orchestra, no headlines, just wind, salt, and laughter. The beach was bare, save for a few wooden chairs, petals in the sand, and sun slipping low. Gloria walked barefoot, dress flowing like seafoam. Jaden held her hand halfway down the aisle, grinning in his little button-up. At the altar, Richard waited. No suit, just linen, hair ruffled by the breeze. Their vows were whispered. The rings were simple, and the kiss was quiet. But it carried years. No gold, no diamonds, only light, and the freedom that comes when love no longer needs to prove itself. Behind them, waves clapped. Beside them, their sun beamed. And between them, finally, nothing was missing. A plain envelope arrived. No logo, no return address. Just Gloria, written in elegant, slightly trembling cursive. She opened it at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling across chipped ceramic mugs. Inside, one sheet of ivory paper, neat, measured, quiet. I can't undo what I've done, but I can stop continuing to do wrong. No apology, but something heavier. You loved him when I couldn't. You raised a boy I pretended wasn't mine. You showed more grace than I gave you credit for. The signature was simple. Charlotte Hawthorne. Gloria held the letter a while, not smiling, not crying, just breathing. Jaden came in with a half-finished drawing. "Who's that from, Mom?" She folded the paper slowly. Someone learning. There was no reply card, no promise of tea or reunion, but the silence that followed felt softer, like a door cracked open, even just a little. The banner flapped gently in the morning breeze. Second Chance Center, a home for hope. A crowd gathered outside the modest brick building. Families, neighbors, old students, and new dreams. No red carpet, just red hearts. Richard stood beside Gloria, holding her hand. Jaden clutched the scissors, proud and ready. Inside, walls were painted with children's art. A reading room, a tiny gallery, a free art class calendar pinned near the door, not fancy, but full of life. Gloria stepped forward. "This isn't just a building," she said, voice firm yet soft. "It's a promise, to every child who's ever felt unseen, and to every mother who chose love over fear." Jaden tugged her sleeve. "Can I cut it now?" Laughter. Cheers. The ribbon fell, and with it, years of silence, struggle, and starting over finally made sense. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something, brick by brick, where no one had to ask if they belonged. Jaden stood at the front of his classroom, palms slightly sweaty. A poster behind him read, "What makes a hero?" He took a breath. Everyone waited. "My mom doesn't wear a cape," he began, "but she fights storms." The room went still. "She paints when she's sad. She smiles when she's tired. She stayed when it was hard. And when I asked where my dad was, she said, 'You'll never feel half-loved.'" He looked at the drawing he'd pinned to the board, a woman holding an umbrella over a boy, colors raining down. "Some people say storms are scary, but my mom turned storms into color. That's what makes her my hero." A beat of silence, then claps, slow, rising, full of warmth. The teacher wiped her eyes. Jaden sat down, cheeks flushed, heart wide open. Sometimes the smallest voices echo the loudest truths. The sun was setting slow, casting soft orange light through the open windows. Crayons rolled across the table, papers stacked with drawings, some messy, some perfect in their own way. Gloria sat beside Jaden, both quiet, both smiling. Richard leaned in close, drawing something simple, 3 stick figures holding hands beneath a painted sky. Jaden looked up. "This one's my favorite," he said, showing a picture of the 3 of them. "We look happy." Gloria nodded. "Because we are." There were no big words, no promises, just warmth, and the kind of quiet that only comes when nothing is missing. They kept drawing, together. No instructions, no rules, just love finding its way back to the page. Because sometimes starting over doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing, again and again. You don't need to be born into a perfect family. You just need the courage to return and build one. If this story stayed with you, share it. Someone else might be waiting for their second chance. And if you believe in that kind of love, subscribe.